Do you accept the reality of this vibrational reality? Mm-hmm. And you acknowledge that you are source energy in a physical body?
Yeah.
And you acknowledge that your emotions let you know?
Yeah.
And do you get it that nobody is ever going to understand you like your source energy does, and that when you give up trying to explain yourself to anybody and you just come into alignment with who you are, then you can maintain this consistent balance, which is what you're reaching for. We think that the uncomfortable upheaval is behind you. We think you know too much to ever go back into that again. And we wouldn't spend any time trying to explain it to people. We would just live it. And what you'll start hearing from people is who are observing you is, it's nice being with you, and I like talking with you about this, and you make a lot of sense, and you seem really sure of yourself, and why are you so strong when you were so young, and why is it that things keep turning out so well for you, and what kind of magic do you possess? And your answer to most of them will be, I don't know, I just like feeling good and try to think thoughts that do. Mm-hmm. Enough?
Yeah.
Do you have something more?
Yeah, I do. And I feel like one of the biggest things, and even like when I'm sitting here talking to you, there's that aspect of me that's that voice, and that inner dialogue, that voice inside your head that just doesn't feel like, it feels like it wants you to feel. For me, it feels like, nah, you're not allowed to feel happy, or you're not.
Well, you see, as we were visiting with you, we drowned that voice out. Mm-hmm. And we just kept talking to you until you felt the resonance of it, and a lot of other people felt it too. In other words, so it's just a matter of realizing that the other side of that wave, in other words, when you know other worthiness, the other side of that wave is feeling unworthy. Mm-hmm. When you are really clear-minded, the other side of that wave is confusion. Mm-hmm. And so don't ask for that to be missing. Just decide where you're going to tune yourself.
It's just a part of it.
It's all part of it. And so don't freak out because those thoughts are there. Just say, well, more and more I'm leaning in the direction of better feeling thoughts, and eventually I will have practiced them. There'll be a sort of tipping point where I will have practiced those more. Jerry and Esther have been at this for a long time. They've been listening to us since 1985. That's when we first began explaining things to them through Esther. And just a week or so ago, or last month, they were going to have dinner with friends on their friend's boat. And Esther was driving, she almost always does, and she set the navigational device for the address, and off they go. And she is allowed 30 minutes and thinks that it will be just right, but she's not sure about traffic, and she really wanted them to be on time because their friend was going to meet them at the gate. The gate is locked, so he was going to be standing there waiting for their arrival, so she wanted to time it well. So they barely got on the highway, and Jerry said, as he pulled an address out of his pocket, I think we're going to be a little early. Let's go by and see the house my parents lived in when I was born. And Esther is thinking, let's not. Not now. I have this all perfectly timed. And so Esther said to Jerry, well, I really don't want us to be late. And Jerry said, all right. So he just put it back in his pocket. And then Esther thought, well, Jerry knows San Diego. He probably wouldn't take us off on some long excursion. So she said, what is the address? And he gave it to her. So she programmed it in. And so they went by that house. And it was fun to see. The house was gone, but there's a park there. And the houses near it, was fun to see what they must have looked like. A lot of little houses. And then Esther looked at her navigational device, and she saw that they only had 3 miles to go and 12 minutes. And so Esther completely relaxed because they were off the freeway. It was Harbor Drive. She knew what that's like. And so she completely relaxed and knew that they would be on time. And so she's just enjoying the harbor and slowly driving and making every light, barely, but making every light. And then they had dinner, and when they got there, their friends were agitated. They'd never seen them like that. They had been arguing about something. And during the course of dinner, their friends began talking about, do you ever argue? Do you ever fight? And Jerry said, no. Esther said, not really. We get along mostly. And then Jerry said, however, Esther was deliberately driving slow, trying to miss lights in order to make us late so that she could be right. Now, in fairness to Jerry, we've told the story many times about how they hook up the bus, and Esther is often hoping that they have to unhook because she'd rather be right than feel good. In other words, as they have different philosophy about all of that. And so he didn't completely pull that out of thin air. But in that particular instance, Esther was really not trying to make them late. And they laughed. They were very playful about it. And Esther said, you're accusing me of something that I'm not guilty of. And Jerry said, no, I'm observing something that you are absolutely guilty of. And as Esther laid in her bed that night, she realized that there was no possible way that she could explain to Jerry what was really going on with her. And then she realized, and his perspective is as valid as mine. In other words, it was the same thing that they were living. They both saw it in completely different ways. And Esther had a sort of releasing epiphany that happened in the middle of all of this that culminated in these words to herself. I'm never again going to try to explain myself to anybody, because what they get doesn't have anything to do with me. It has everything to do with where they are. In other words, do you realize how hard you do? Do you realize what hard work it is to try to make yourself understood to others, you see? And so that's that voice that you keep thinking. We usually tease and say that's not your inner voice, that's your mother. But we don't just mean your mother. We mean it, that's the voice of almost everybody. The world is trying to get you to behave in a way so that they can feel better, you see. So you've been trained without anybody really meaning to. You've been trained away from your guidance. And so you're going to discover such a refreshing thing happen as you now are aware of your guidance. You're now aware of how it feels, and you're going to feel your personal empowerment as you're able to align with that always consistent, always loving, all-knowing energy that is always there beaming a signal for you. And if that were not true, we would not have seen the light of you spiking in the way that it is. You're going to have fun with this. Just chill out, relax. Don't take life so seriously. Be easier about it. Have more fun with it, and say to yourself really, really frequently, I don't have to think about that right now. I don't have to think about that right now. 3 things we would do. Meditate every day if you can find the time to do it, and just chill. Try to quiet your mind for at least 5 seconds or 10 seconds or 20 seconds or 30 seconds or maybe even a minute. The other thing is make lists of positive aspects, but only when you're in the vortex. Do all of your work from inside the vortex, because what you've been doing, you've been trying to do it from outside the vortex, and it just gets bigger. It gets bigger. All of it from inside the vortex. It will be easy for you. We've enjoyed this immensely. Good time for a segment of lunch.